Afternoon and welcome to our council meeting for this, the 14th of December. To open our meeting today, our Deputy Mayor is going to do the honour.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a little potpourri of thoughts and a very good afternoon to you all. Let's have a good afternoon, and I'm very confident that we will. I want to start by congratulating us. One of the biggest challenges to having a functional council is whether or not we have the ability to agree to disagree with each other respectfully. And while it's only been a year and a bit, we've had plenty of situations where we have disagreed with each other, but we've done it respectfully. There's a bit of rough and tumble, and one must learn to not take differences of opinion personally or be too sensitive. We need a somewhat thick skin because, as Tana Umanga famously said, it's not tiddlywinks, mate. Thanks, Grant. Although, to be fair, he was talking about a tackle in rugby. I was at the opening of Food HQ's new office and the launch of the Manawatū food strategy last night with Mayor Helen and Councillor Blackmore. I was talking to Dean Williamson, CEO and publisher at Agri HQ, and he emphasised the enormous respect he has for those of us who put our hands up to be elected, publicly scrutinised and in some cases rubbished by those who do nothing but criticise. It's so easy to stand on the sideline throwing stones. I'm happy to receive criticism if there's better or good alternative suggestions coming with it, but I have very little tolerance for those who just moan and criticise. Dean's opinion was that BAU, business as usual, should not be an option. We must always be making our place better. He's putting in a mountain bike track on his farm and was enthused by our walking and cycling track plans. As a successful business person, Dean knows that to attract good people to work in our businesses, we have to be an attractive place to live with good things to do in terms of leisure activities, etc. On a similar topic, Carl Johnson and I had a meeting with John Adams from the Greasy Chain Trust a week or so ago. They run the gravel and tar and slicks and stone cycle races, but are actually more about cycling for the community. And John wants us to create a great New Zealand ride here in the Manawatū. This is not an event, but a great trail for riding with options. And we have several components of such a great ride already and just need to join them up and add to them. The important thing that I got from that meeting was that he advised us that the Great New Zealand rides bring an economic benefit of currently $915 million. And I think we need to get a slice of that. We have the scenery, the contour, the side attractions, the villages and the town to make such a trail with options to keep visitors for a few nights. This is an exciting economic development opportunity. I note that most ministers of religion who open our meetings pray for us to have wisdom in our decision making. And it's such a recurring theme that one must be forgiven for thinking that they don't have a lot of confidence that we have much wisdom without God's help. I believe we do have a collective wisdom, but democracy dictates that sometimes you're on the winning side and sometimes you're on the losing side. Accept your losses, move on, and don't hold a grudge. I have great optimism for our district. Fielding in the Manawatū district have generally improved enormously since I came here as a young lad in 1961, and from when I came back here as an adult in 1983. Thanks to council, fielding promotion, and the many wonderful people and organisations, mainly volunteers, who pitch in to make our communities better. We have so much to be grateful for. But there is so much more to do. And there's a real risk of stagnation and going backwards if we don't have continual improvement. We've had that before, particularly in the 1990s, with a declining population and businesses leaving the district. It had the risk of last one out, turn out the lights. So if you want rates affordability, you need some growth. Decline means less ratepayers to cover the same cost to run the district, so increased rates per ratepayer. Doing nothing except BAU leads to higher rates. I'm confident that we can find the right balance between growth, good levels of service, good business as usual, and affordability. To get to where I'm confident that we will be at the end of our meetings today, I wish to thank Shane, Lynn, Francis, Amanda and Hamish and all of your teams for your dedicated work. It's difficult work, but to get us to where we are today. And I wish to thank you as Mayor and fellow councillors for the good-humoured debates to get us here. We've come a long way from our sessions at Himitangi, and while we have another 6 months to go, today is a big milestone. So I wish you a very Merry Christmas, relaxing and fun break, and a very positive 2024. I look forward to working with you next year as well.
Thank you. Very good words. Apologies firstly for my voice, which will come and go. So we have apologies this afternoon from Councillor Quigley, and on Zoom we've got 3 councillors today: Councillor Short, Councillor Bell and Councillor Belsky. So no requests for leave of absence. We go to item 4. This is confirmation of minutes. There are no minutes. Today's and the last meeting will go to our council meeting in February.
Probably should approve the apology.
Yes, good point.
I'll move that the apologies be approved. Apology.
Thank you. This is the apology from Councillor Quigley, seconded by Councillor McFadgen. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So item 5 is declaration of interest. Any items on the agenda today that elected members may wish to declare? None? Great, let's move on. No public forum today and no presentations. We do, however, have a notification of a late item. And the purpose of this is to seek council's approval to release the public excluded resolution on the tender award for the MDC road maintenance and renewals to the public domain. And the reason that this item missed the deadline for inclusion on the agenda was due to the short period of time between the council meetings of the 7th and today's meeting. So officers recommend that this item not be delayed to a later meeting, as this is the last meeting for 2023 and it should be released to the public domain before the Christmas break. So on that basis, we have, so what I'm going to put is not the actual motion for that, that will come up in discussion on late item, but the motion, please. Well, I move that we accept the late item to our agenda today. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Ford, put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Right, so we will pick that up when we get to item 12. Thank you. No recommendations from other committees, so we can go for your information on page 5, the minutes from the last District Development Committee meeting, and I'll ask Councillor Ford, anything in there that you wish to highlight?
Just very briefly, I'm pleased with where we've got to with the proposed CEDA statement of expectations, and once again we had a number of groups that just remind us how lucky we are in our community that with so many people doing such great work, and most of them volunteers. So it was humbling to listen to their reports, hear their reports. Yep, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments in relation to those minutes? None? Right, we move straight on to officers' report. We're on page 17, 11.1, the budget carry forward requests to 23-24. And you will have seen this morning that was an updated paper sent to you in regards to this to get a couple of errors corrected. And I'll hand over to Amanda and Hamish. Thank you.
Thank you. I've brought Hamish up because I'm sure you'll have questions and Hamish will be the one probably to answer them. Right, so this is the budgeted carry forwards from last year, which was to the 30th of June 2023. Nope, 2022. Yep, 23. Oh my gosh, working across multiple years. 30th of June 2023. So these are the works, the capital works programs and some of the OPEX that did not get completed at that time but were budgeted. Some of the OPEX side of it are predominantly rates funded items where we've received the revenue from rates and are now sitting in various reserves. So targeted reserves for various targeted rates or the general rates reserve. The other items are CapEx. We've got growth, new and renewals. Your renewals is funded from your renewal reserve, which is your depreciation funding. Your new is your capital, is the CapEx spend funded by debt. And of course, we haven't drawn that debt down because we haven't done the work. And then you've got the growth spend, which you're all quite aware of. As your worship said, I've sent out the updated report because Councillor Fiona pointed out that I had transposed a couple of numbers further through the report. So the section that has been changed is not the resolution. The resolution still stands. It is section 7.4. It's quite loud, isn't it? Very much. Okay, so what we're talking about here is the capital budgeted carry forwards from 22 to 23 come to $21.9 million. The annual plan capital budgets was 32.29, so I could have put 32.3, and that we are looking to reduce the annual plan by bumping some of that stuff forward into the LTP, which I'm sure you're aware of. We've been talking about the LTP and the phasing of CapEx spend. So this is just noting that we will be rolling some of those annual plan items forward, but the carry forward portion is 21.9. Once we take the carry forwards into this year and we bounce, I can't find another word for that, so I'm saying bounce, some of the annual plan projects into the LTP, what I'm expecting our total budget for this year for CapEx to be is 44.3. Before you approve anything else, it would be the 44.3. So that's what you'll start seeing coming through in reports. Of the carry forwards, there's 5.96 mil of it will be required from debt. So that's the debt from the previous year's resolution that we haven't drawn down. It's about 5.9 million of that. On the attachment, you've got a list of the actual items and the projects. And that's pretty much all that I've got to say. I'm happy to take some questions.
Thank you. And then you have the list of all of the items on there. So let's open it up for questions, comments. I had a few queries. I see this would be directed to Hamish probably. I see Turner's Road has got 3 entries in there.
Yep.
Is that just the way the project's been divided up?
Yeah, there's 2 parts to that. One is the 3 stages, but also too, when we look at the way that the growth accounts are factored into our works list, you've got a roading component, a water component, a wastewater component, and a stormwater component. So it's one project, but it's cut in a number of different ways.
Thank you. I figured that was it. There's some there about stormwater growth. So they're to do with new requirements for stormwater rather than renewing our existing stormwater.
Yeah, so the stormwater growth or the growth accounts have effectively sat in a single sort of bucket budget, if you like, and then from there we've allocated it out by the projects. So as we've done the work to rephase and recut the carry forwards this year's program, and particularly looking forward into the long-term plan, we've taken I guess a finer look at the individual project components. So anything that references stormwater growth will either be allocated to Turner's Road or some of the Maiawa projects in there. But it is all that DC funded growth work. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry, Your Worship, the reference to anything in the villages or in fielding is new works. So if there's stormwater projects which are listed as new work, that's predominantly the village upgrade program.
Thank you. The Vinegar Hill project on water scheme.
Yep.
So is that funding we've allocated, is that for our staff's time to help put the business case together?
So that project, they received some grant funding through PGF or one of the subsequent funds. And they also asked for expressions of interest from farmers that were in the catchment area. And they paid, I think it was $3 per hectare into the fund. So that money is effectively held by council to spend on behalf of that group. But there's no rates in there as such. It's just almost like held in trust.
Thank you.
And you'll note there's no capital funding attached to that. It's very much in that front end feasibility, business case, consent exploration, workloads.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the team? Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thanks. It's the same question I think I ask every time you come to us with this request. Can you give us some assurance that all of these requests are for monies not spent because the projects have been deferred versus not needed because you're over budgeted and the funds weren't required?
So as we went through what was quite a detailed process, and this is part of the reason why this report's coming to council just before Christmas. It usually comes in sort of September, October. We've deliberately deferred that because of the amount of work to do in the capital works programs for the long-term plan. But it obviously picks up the carry forwards from last financial year into this, and then this financial year into the next. So as part of that process, we have looked at every line item, every budget. There have been some that we've removed because we've simply had either leftover funds from a completed project, or the initial need of that project's been surpassed by something else, and so that budget's been replaced. So we're confident that what's in the carry forward requests is works that need to be done. They've been through with a fine tooth comb to take out anything that's what you'd probably regard as discretionary.
Yeah, I guess the reason for my question is that if we've over budgeted and underspent on projects through the last 12 months, that's one way of boosting our reserves versus having to rate for it the following year. With some because we've already rated for that work. Just on some of the specifics, for example, it's not exactly clear in your report, but as an example, page 21 of our report, there's an item, non-subsidised roading renewal work for 149,000. You want to carry forward 68. The comment is 81,000 used for the Aorangi Marae, carry forward 68,000 forward to 23-24. Now, is that project finished or not?
That project finished. There was a little bit of remedial work to be done in there. And so what we typically do in that roading space is you get your NZTA funding comes in your 3-year funding block. And so typically we'll keep the money in that 3 years, of which we're now into the last year.
Yeah.
And so it's carrying forward the residual budget for that. It would be spent for any tweaks and changes on that project. It's available as a discretionary for other things on the network. But basically at the end of this financial year, if it's not spent, any subsidy that would be attached from NZTA disappears. And then we'd make a call as to whether there was a project need for that money or whether it's essentially returned to the roading reserve.
Yeah, so that's one that probably is then a reserve fund, isn't it? Just a couple other ones sort of highlighted here. Most of them are small, but again, water supply new connections, you're looking to carry forward 16,000 new connections.
Yep.
Completed as required.
So the new connection budget there is effectively the cost of getting the new works done for when a supply connects to a property. We get that money reimbursed from the property owner, connectee. And so it's almost like a holding account for money in, money out. It's not an actual, it's not a rates funded budget that we spend here. So you'll find across all the utility budgets for water, wastewater and stormwater, there's a new connection amount. You'll note that it's quite high for Hamatangi sewage because the connection fee there and the capital cost of that is quite a bit higher.
Right.
So.
Okay, thank you. Carrying on if I can, couple of items under halls, Halcombe Hall roof complete. There's 9,982 left over. I mean, is that money required for something else or not? Or is it just going to be carried forward and used for something else? Well, I don't understand and the same with the next line, high profile hall renewals, 24,218 left over. Work has been completed. Why are we carrying that forward?
So, Councillor, I'm not sure which line it is, but is it right next to the description? It says new or renewal. What does it say on those particular lines that you're looking at? Because I've got a slightly different page numbering.
It's in the column unspent balance, then carry forward request.
Yep. But if on that line, you'll have the description of the work.
HL 4004.
Does it have renew or new next to it?
Or renew.
Renew?
Yeah.
Okay. So that particular fund is funded from your depreciation reserve. If we don't fund it, it doesn't cost anything for us to not use it because it's your depreciation reserve. So we're not budgeting for interest costs. We're not budgeting for debt of any sort. So by rolling that particular budget forward of 9,000, I think it is, it has very little impact if we don't actually use it. The community facilities budgets are quite small, and we have cut them in the past very significantly. And so rolling forward those small things allow them to actually to respond to things that pop up from the community in those hauling areas. So we do tend to roll them forward to maintain those small hauls.
Yeah.
And ultimately, if it's not spent, that renewal money goes back into the depreciation reserve at the end of the financial year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Unspent, yeah.
All right. Last one. District plan review. We talked about this last meeting, I believe. Pretty big amount there. 353,000 we want to carry forward, required to continue the district plan review. But on top of that, I think we were looking at a substantial amount of money in the next few years as well. You know, this is a massively expensive project.
I can speak to that.
Yeah.
So the amount that was carried forward for this year, there was a significant jump in the usual amount that is in the long-term plan for the district plan work. And we didn't use all of that, obviously, and we're using that this year. And the money that was, the additional money that was requested hasn't been approved by council.
Okay. So, yeah, by the look of it, we'd budgeted last year to spend 871, we'd spent 518. So you've indicated there's still a fair bit of work to do.
Yes.
And that money will be required plus some.
And if I could just speak to that, that's a targeted rate. So we have rated for it because it is actually an OPEX budget. It will sit in the reserves and it can only be used in the district plan. So it makes sense to roll that forward because we already have the funds in essence.
Okay. I didn't see any issues with anything else.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Just let me find So I noticed in in some of these roading, especially page 21 at the top, unsealed roading, metalling, sub-roading, footpath renewal, blah blah blah. Unspent balance, carry forward request 0. But my question was around, is the removed is no carry forward from NZTA. So just on those two lines there's an unspent balance of 75 grand. Could probably go to Stuart's reserve fund. But I'm trying to understand the balance between NZTA not allowing carry forwards and whether that means some subsidised work, whether we're carrying forward our portion of it or whether we're losing money because we haven't spent stuff that's subsidised. I'm a little uncertain.
Yeah, sorry, so much of this has been a process gone over and over. So during the process, a couple of things can have happened. We will have looked at the individual works program for that area and the roading team may have said, actually, we've met what we need to do, so we won't need to do that. Or alternatively, we've looked and said, actually, we're going to be doing a whole lot more in the LTP and we've rephased across to the LTP. I'm not sure which stage in the process the roading and general manager have said, actually, we don't need to carry that forward. We'll be probably reusing that in another category. Because from my understanding with NZTA is you can use it across multiple jobs. So we may not do it in that particular job, but we may have reallocated it to another job.
And just add to that too, there's been, obviously with the years that we've had, there's been a lot of, I think juggling is probably the right word in terms of budgets with the emergency works to actually get in and get that response and repair sort of activity done as and when. And so there has been a bit of juggling of budgets within the codes until such time as NZTA approve the emergency works claim and pay the subsidised component, which then comes back into the budgets. So there's a lot of line items that sit within the roading activity. So there's a wash up there too.
So And like I noticed there was quite a bit around no carry forward because of NZTA. So just on those first two lines, then where does that 75K disappear to?
So noting that it's a renewal fund, which means it's CapEx. So what that is saying is if we do not spend it, that means that we are not getting a subsidy from NZTA for their 51%.
Yeah.
But it also means that we're not paying 49% out of our depreciation / renewal reserve. Now, bearing in mind that we treat that renewal reserve as a pool of funds, and so we use it across our other renewals. All it does is that we're rating for depreciation, it goes in there and you may use it at a later date, or you may be using that at the moment for another project. But it's not actually funds that we've taken from anyone and put aside specifically. It's your depreciation fund. Did I explain that very well, Councillor?
I guess I'm still, it's quite late in the year, Amanda. I guess I'm still struggling actually to grasp why we're not, if it's unspent balance, why we're not carrying it forward, and if we're going to spend it somewhere else.
So we're not carrying it forward in those particular
Have I missed
projects.
something?
Well, I'm presuming on those items, it's just not needed. Yeah, we'll start with a new budget next year.
Well, we're starting with the new budget this year because we're already into this year where that money's been carried forward or not carried forward to. So there's an existing work program that sits into those same codes in this new financial year.
Your turn, mate.
So during the LTP, of course, we were very careful. We don't want to carry forward things that aren't going to be spent, because if you carry it forward, so if you took $1 million and say, we're going to do that, but you know you're not, when we get to the LTP, we have to budget for $1 million worth of that depreciation. So we have gone through this and said, are you really going to spend that, guys? You know, in these next 6 months, are you going to spend this bit of money? And if they said no, it's not carried forward.
So it just goes back into the depreciation fund.
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Ford.
Thanks. You probably explained it, but relating to the cycling facilities, 452, third to bottom on page 21, CapEx budget. So there was a budget of 847,000, actual 75,000, unspent balance 771,000, carry forward request 0. And then there's something out to the side, loan required 378,000. I don't understand that. So what is that money not being carried forward and just lost?
So that particular example, if you recall, I mean, I think you'll all recall the North Street Cycleway.
Yep.
So we had money in the budget for West Street and South Street.
Yep.
And following the success of North Street, we decided that we would not proceed with the subsequent stages of that program.
Yep.
So there was the request to NZTA as to whether we could transfer that to the Te Araroa Trail in part, where they gave us permission because it fitted into that same walking and cycling category. It was just a lesser spend that we could do in that financial year. So that's effectively what we don't need from the initial budget, if you like, in the current year. And there is funding still in the next 3-year block for the Te Araroa Trail.
So, for example, if we are able to find a solution from, say, Mount Big School down into Fielding, which is, it's quite a big challenge, but there is some funding available for that work.
The current
Trail.
The current funding claim to NZTA for the 24-27 financial year does include a not insubstantial figure in each of the 3 years for that work. And it's included in our draft long-term plan budget. So it is there.
Okay.
Obviously, if NZTA come back and say they're putting a line through that, then that will be a discussion we'll need to have as to whether it's a priority project for us. But as we sit here today, it's in the budget and it's in the TO claim. We've made other areas of adjustment across the budget in the hope that that's enough in terms of some of the budget constraints they'll be looking to enforce. But we're sort of in their hands. But at this stage, yes, we're looking to proceed with that.
Okay, and just the 378,000 loan required, I don't understand what that is.
No, that's me. That's an error. So what that is when I ran down and did a calculation based on the unspent balance, It's the loan required if you were to take the whole unspent balance. And then we did some more work and said, oh no, we're not going to need to do that. So that loan required column is saying if we carried forward all of the unspent balance, what is the loan requirement? So what it's actually saying is that the loan requirement is going to be less than that because some of those items we're not carrying forward. I was just looking at that thinking, oh bugger, I forgot to update that.
So that should be zero.
That should be zero because we're not carrying it forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Spotting.
Any other questions, comments? In the detail, councillor Campbell.
Just one more thing. So the total capital request is 21.9 million. Is that right?
21.9, yep. Have I got a total at the bottom of that page?
So
Yep.
just checking against the annual plan, we were planning on spending 31.4 million. So we're carrying forward about 70% of it.
Yes, so as you go, yeah, so we have this, as we've discussed, we have this rolling carry forward issue. Each year we're rolling around $20 odd million forward every year. So as you recall through the LTP process, we've recognised that that's not a great thing to be doing. So this report is also talking about bouncing or rephasing some of our current annual plan of just under $10 million. So you'll see that we're going to take the 21, say 22, it's 21.9 of these carry forwards. Our annual plan for this year is 32. That would have given us a really large budget, but then we're bouncing another 9.8 of the annual plan out. So what we're saying is our budget will be 44. Now 44 is achievable. We get in the high 30s. I think we got 38 last year. So that seems quite achievable. Still a stretch, but still achievable.
Yeah, well, it follows along the discussion we had at the Audit Risk Committee meeting this morning, where the Auditor General's one of the 5 key areas they'll be looking at is doability of capital expenditure. So,
yeah,
our history. I can't remember what the carry forward was last year, but I presume it was a similar figure. So if we're carrying forward 70%. Year after year, it means we've been over optimistic, probably for some time.
I think that's a really valid point, and I think the work that we've done collectively over the last couple of months, as we've reset the long-term plan budgets going forward, driven out of necessity around the debt cap. To be fair, but looking at this process in terms of the reduced and rephased carry forwards, the rephasing of this current year's budget, and then looking ahead for the next 10 years, there's been some very deliberate steps to try and effectively catch up on work, and then not have that continual sort of push forward of carry forwards every year. So I guess it's a wait and see how we go, but there's certainly the budgets are set up to be able to do that.
Thank you. Anything further? Otherwise, we have 3 recommendations on page 17. If I could have a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Ford.
Your worship, I move 1, that the council approve the requested financial carry forwards of 2.78 million for operational budgets into the 2023-24 financial year to be funded from reserve funds. 2, that the council approve the requested capital budget financial carry forwards of 21.9 million into the 2023-24 financial year, noting that this is a combination of new, renewal and growth capital work budgets. 3, that council approve the subsequent loan funding required carry forward for the capital works budgets of 5.96 million, noting that this was part of the debt resolution in the 2022-23 financial year. That the council note that 5.48 million of unspent capital works budgets from 2022-23 are now included within the 2024-34 long-term plan, and that council note that 9.87 million of capital works budgets from annual plan 2023-24 are now rephased into the 2024-34 long-term plan budgets.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor McFadyen. Thank you. Any further discussion? None? I'll put the motions all. Oh, sorry, Councillor Underwood.
With recommendation 3, is that saying that we've already approved that 5.96 million, it's just waiting to be drawn down?
Yeah, technically we don't need it as a resolution. I like to put it up there so it's in front because the resolution already exists from the previous year to cover it. But I just feel that it's kind of bringing it to your attention that some of this is still loan funded.
It's a belts and braces approach to it. Yeah.
Mm. And you only draw that down as you spend, obviously, which is why we haven't drawn it down so far.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's nothing further, we've had a mover and a second. I'll put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Right, we move to page 30 and we are talking about accepted materials in the curbside recycling collections. And I'll hand this one, Hamish, you're going to, and Brittany.
Yep.
Welcome, Brittany.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, Brittany's, as usual, going to do most of the talking on this one.
Hopefully, Hamish.
Hopefully, she says. Yeah, I'll let you talk and then we can pick up any of the background to it.
Thank
Good
you.
morning, Mayor and councillors. Afternoon. Yes, it's been a long day, Andrew, or councillor. So the purpose of this report is that we need council to pass a resolution to specify the types of waste that may be placed in approved containers, which is curbside recycling bins and crates. Council need to make a resolution that gives effect to the standard materials for curbside collections notice 2023, notice number 1. And this Gazette notice mandates what the accepted and excluded materials are under the Waste Minimisation Act. So I'll talk you through this a bit more. It's quite interesting. So the intended benefits of mandated collected materials are a nationally standardised accepted materials list that is consistent across the country. So the benefits of that is building a clear and trusted system understood by households and businesses, and also for those making packaging choices. The downside of it is that it reduces flexibility for local councils to decide what materials they collect based on the recycling and reuse opportunities they identify. So we are required to give effect to this mandate by 1st of February 2024. That means today is the last council meeting we can do so. So in clause 2.5 of the report, you'll notice the list of accepted and excluded materials. The mandate also talks about food waste in terms of what can be accepted and what can't. However, because our council doesn't yet have a food waste collection service, this report focuses only on curbside recycling materials. So accepted materials are dry recycling, which is glass bottles, jars, paper, cardboard, plastic bottles and trays, and containers of plastic types 1, 2, and 5, as well as aluminium and steel tins and cans. So that's no different to what our council currently accepts. What is different is what we are no longer allowed to accept. So there's a list there in the report in 2.5, including plastic types 3, 4, 6, and 7. So you may have seen in the media, some councils across New Zealand have already stopped accepting these plastic types because they were essentially baling them and stockpiling them with no reuse opportunities. Our council does have a reuse opportunity that we're actively pursuing for type 4. Unfortunately, this mandate means we would no longer be able to maximise that reuse opportunity. I've done a bit of a calculation on the savings that were created from that opportunity for type 4, and it was about a $30,000 landfill saving per year. So that's kind of the downside of the mandate for us. Just clarifying that we don't need to make a change to our solid waste bylaw based on the mandate, but what we do need to do based on the bylaw is to pass a resolution to specify the types of waste that may be placed in approved containers. So that's why we're asking you to make a resolution today. The resolution is not required to give effect to the mandate. It's already a legislative requirement. So I'll just clarify the options council have. One is to accept the recommendation of the report and give effect to the mandate. 2 is to delay making the recommendation. However, this is not recommended because it's our last chance to do so, as we need to be compliant by 1st of February. In regards to option 3, not accepting the recommendation of this report, we could continue accepting those plastic types. However, there will be an auditing program undertaken by MFE with a penalty being them withholding our waste levy income, potentially. Also, MFE will be running a national campaign on the curbside materials that will be collected across New Zealand. We're also expected to do our own comms, which will plan following the recommendation today. We do not anticipate financial implications. As I said, it doesn't include additional materials that we need to collect, only taking some away. And also the cost of a comms plan is expected to be minimal. So a bit of information there, hopefully clear. Over to you for any questions before the recommendations.
And just before Brittany does pass it over, I mean, this I think is it's a piece of legislation which is possibly caught in that limbo period in the same way as the speed management plans were. We don't know what, if any, changes will be made to this in the next month or 2 or 3. But in that sort of responsible corporate entity, if you like, we're required to have something in place by 1 February. This is the opportunity to do that. How actively we phase that in with our public and our collection systems will be up to us. And then what happens in terms of the legislative framework with the change of government is an unknown for us there. So that kind of paints the picture of why we've brought this to council today.
Thank you. My first question is, how on earth is Joe Blogg's public going to, well, myself, going to remember or figure out which identification code plastic I'm trying to get rid of and what I should do with it and where?
Yeah.
Is it going to create more confusion and more rubbish than we currently do?
There's differing opinions, obviously. You could say that actually standardise across New Zealand will mean that we can better and more clearly educate people because it's not different. The second view is that actually it's best to separate everything and let council, deal with it. If it's clean and separated, gives us the best opportunity to do something good with it. And then the third is that it's terrible because it takes away local decision making and forces it to go to landfill.
Yeah.
And I think given this is a one size fits all across the country, there's different councils that are probably not doing very much, and this will require them to do something they're currently not doing. And because we've been very proactive in this space for quite some time and very deliberately, it probably has the counter effect for us. So as I said, the way that we might phase this in could take its time until the government reviews this policy going forward. So.
Absolutely. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. I have a couple of questions. With this category, called a category of class 4, is Future Post able to process that particular class of plastic?
Yes, they are.
So therefore, given that we are struggling to get the tonnage requirement to make their plant viable, would this further restrict the opportunity to do that? And before you answer that, I have one further question. Is this an opportunity to gather up the class 4 from the other regions to support the strategy of Future Post and actually gain some extra revenue?
So first answer to your question, yes, it would further constrain that initiative that we've been working on as part of the resource recovery park as a whole. And I guess the second part to that, if all councils are required to do this and those lower grade plastics are not collected, it would either make it more expensive or less accessible in terms of getting that and directing it in. So there's probably not a commercial advantage there. To be honest, given we do have a downstream use for these products, it probably makes our life more difficult, not more easy. Which is ironic given the intent of the legislation.
Absolutely. Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. I have 2 questions too. So those materials on the excluded list, have we had any problems or issues with collecting those now or in the past? And the second, question is, have we done any modelling to see what impact this would have for our district on what goes to landfill and what the costs might be associated with that?
I've only provided projections for that one reuse opportunity, but I definitely could do a one in terms of the landfill cost of the increased tonnage going to landfill versus what we potentially send to a recycle reuse opportunity. That would be definitely a good idea. Unfortunately, it would just be losses, probably. And the first question, what was the first question again? Sorry?
Just whether or not there's been an issue with collecting the stuff that's in the excluded materials list.
Yeah, so the smaller items excluded are what we would already exclude. Those are tricky in terms of the MRF. So yeah, a lot of those materials in the excluded list is good stuff. Just probably the disappointing stuff is the plastic type. Yeah.
We tend to use the landfill cost as a sort of a baseline in terms of the cost benefit analysis of any recycle or reuse opportunity. So we know there's a fixed fee in terms of the landfill, which has a CPI adjustment in it, and that's come through council for approval in years gone by. There's also the emissions trading sort of carbon cost, and then the landfill levy all on top of that. So that plus the transportation from here out to Bonnie Glen, that kind of gives us a base cost. So anything that we can do with those recycled materials that costs less than landfill is a win. So essentially anything that takes waste out of a recycling stream that we've currently got and puts it back on the truck and back to Bonnie Glen is a negative. Negative by way of cost and negative by way of environmental outcome.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So just I had the same query as Councillor McFadden, excuse me, in terms of future post and what they can process. So 1, 2 and 5's good, and you're saying so 3, 4, 6 and 7 future posts can't use them all.
No, they can.
So they
can.
they use 4 definitely. They're also like looking at different ways to, especially the soft plastics, to deal with those. And when you can have the mix with the higher grade plastics, it makes them more possible. So kind of removing those from our collections means that we can't trial or send samples, that kind of thing, because we don't have the separated material.
So what it actually means in practice is that you've got your higher grade plastics have a value, and so we can actually sell them and get money as a sort of valuable product. The lower grade plastics don't have a value and they have a cost associated with landfill, and so the different plastics have a different melting point, and that sits within the sort of the future post operation at different levels. So it does give an opportunity to blend that, but it also potentially has a negative impact on the future post model, because if they've got to pay commodity rates at the higher end for those higher grade plastics, that has a knock-on impact in terms of their business model for the overall.
Yes, I understand they'd worked hard to get their material price comparably to treated pine. So at the moment, correct me if I'm wrong, but I imagine that all sorts of stuff goes in if it's plastic, currently just goes in the recycling bin. People wouldn't have a clue, and that's manually sorted.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Some people have a clue, some don't, but it all goes through the MRF, which is manually sorted.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, correct.
So, because I'm a bit slow today, just clarify.
Put your tie on, I think it'll come right.
So it's the shirt.
Yeah. So we've had information about future posts' potential involvement in the district, and are we saying that this here could contaminate's probably not the right word, but it might be. This could slipper their ability to be able to do something that's economically viable.
Probably makes life a bit harder for them, I think, would be a fair assessment. Yeah. Not being sort of part of the commercial aspects of that company, but looking at the volumes and the types of plastics and the value of those grades, I would say this would make their life more difficult, not more easier.
Councillor Underwood.
This is only for curbside collection, this mandate, isn't it? So there's nothing to stop, well, the Helcom stuff you can
Yes, we
still
can
collect
still
from there in
accept
other
drop-offs,
places.
yeah.
If there was the right kind of promotion put forward, you could have drop zones throughout Fielding as well, putting future posts through as being a sustainable future post, and then collect those other ones in these drop zones that aren't, and then on them say, because I'm looking here at class 4 is mainly bags, is that right? Plastic bags, bread bags, poly magazine covers. If you were to say these are for, for making posts,
Yeah.
I would say there would be people on the bandwagon of sustainability who would come and drop those plastics in those other containers.
Yeah, I think through your worship, I think I'm probably a bit lukewarm on the idea of having drop zones around the town. I mean, we have a drop zone at the end of everyone's gateway once a week, once a fortnight now. We have the refuse transfer station, which is set up to receive, and so we could redirect the configuration of that if we had to. But you're talking more carbon footprint, more miles, more trips in to do the same thing. So again, it's all kind of counterproductive. But I'd have to give a lot of thought to how we would have these sort of drop zones, as you mentioned, around town. All of that comes with a site, a cost, potentially consenting, collection, processing, cleaning. It doesn't sound like it's going to make our life cheaper or easier. So I'd be cautiously approach that.
Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, get a supplementary on here. So hypothetically speaking, the sort of technology that pyrolysis was promoting, would some of this sort of stuff become part of the fuel that may have?
Through your worship, hypothetically speaking, that technology relied on pre-sorting. So it wasn't part of the pyrolysis specifically, it was the pre-sorting of materials prior, which also included the chopping and sort of consistency of the fuel through there, which also included removing things like concrete, steel, and other sort of non-suitable products. So that sorting technology exists and could be bolted into an existing MRF, for example. But again, that comes with a capital investment. And if you're taking it out and it's going to landfill, it's still going on a truck to landfill at a cost. So
Thank you for that hypothetical answer. So the only other thing is, just so that I'm absolutely clear, is that we can do this, but actually what we then go and do about it is entirely our decision. Is that correct?
So we have to stop collecting these materials at curbside.
I mean, so therein lies the problem, because actually most people will just continue to chuck plastic stuff in the recycling bin.
Yeah.
So how are we going to mandate against every single householder
so it would just be via our standard processes like auditing and stuff like that. But you're probably right, it will take a long time to actually
phase in.
For the education to change, as you look more and more at your fridge magnet on the types you can put in.
And like I said, there's probably some advocacy to the new administration of the Ministry for the Environment around this, to pick up a lot of the points we've discussed in terms of the implications and practicalities and sort of desired outcomes that it's designed for.
I should also mention, so I contacted the Ministry for the Environment, seeing if we could get an exclusion from not being able to collect based on a proven recycling reuse on an opportunity. They said, unfortunately, that's not possible
at the moment.
So just the last thing that I really need to understand is, what's the risk for us to say yay or nay?
So that was the auditing program I mentioned, and withholding of our waste levy income,
Which is quite significant.
Well, it's what we use to fund the implementation of our waste minimisation plan
And the waste weighbridge
and a whole bunch of other
Yep,
things. So
yep,
we
okay.
wouldn't want to lose that funding.
Yep, fair enough.
It's non-rates funding.
Yep. Understand.
Yep.
But I guess what you're saying is, if we did approve these and our approach to implementing it was somewhat
Tardy.
long, there potentially could be some new government reforms around all this.
I think that's a sensible approach.
Or some commercially viable opportunities that might come within that longer period of time.
Yep.
Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. I mean, with plastics, obviously there's different grades, as you've said. There's high quality rigid. but I would imagine that Future Post would want a mixture of those flexibles, because otherwise if you had a rigid fence post and rammed it in the ground, it would shatter. Potentially,
It's also what Hamish mentioned before, so you're more likely to send your high quality plastics to them if they can also take your lower grade.
yeah, but I also think it's part of it. I would think that they would need a little bit of a blend in there, a little bit to give them better impact resistance. What I'm suggesting is that I think we should, as a suggestion, we're obviously under pressure to do this, but I think we should engage with Future Post to see if there's a case for them to be able to use those other plastics, to then put a case to be allowed to collect them. That was my point.
No, and we can certainly do that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councillor Blackmore.
Thank you. Just thinking about the comment around, what you can and can't put in your curbside recycling bins. So from my understanding, at the moment, a lot of stuff ends up in those bins that shouldn't be anyway now.
That's correct. Contamination, yeah.
And so there would just be more stuff in these bins that probably shouldn't be there. How's that dealt with at the moment?
So essentially everything that comes in through the curbside recycling goes through the MRF. As it's manually sorted to the different grades of different products, there's also a residual kind of waste area.
Yeah.
So that gets taken off that waste stream and effectively it goes to landfill.
Right.
At a subsidy subsidy through the rates, because we're getting no direct user revenue through blue bag sales or through transfer station gate takings.
Yeah.
So people do use it as a bit of a free disposal. That is captured through some of the technology on the collection trucks, and we do target the individual properties where it's seen.
Oh yeah.
But it's a constant battle.
So we can anticipate more of that really with this change.
I wouldn't expect that the collectors would be able to spot it as well as the curbsiders, for example, mucky contamination that they reject now. Yeah. You wouldn't be able to tell what plastic type it potentially was.
Some people have no regard for what should go in there.
Yeah.
It's shocking, some of the stuff that is chucked in there as a rubbish bin that shouldn't be there at all.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? No? Right. So we have a recommendation, which I've just now lost, on page 30. Do we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Hadfield.
Councillor McHadfield.
You win.
I like that, Your Worship. Thank you for that. I might just make a note of that one, actually. Good to use a different name every now and then. Hang on. What page are we on?
30.
Yeah, you got me. Any I'd move that pursuant to the standard materials for curbside collections, notice 2023, notice number 1. Well, let's wait for notice number 2. Under the Waste Minimisation Act 2008, Manawatū District Council specifies that only the following types of waste are accepted on approved containers: curbside recycling bins, paper and cardboard, plastic bottles, trays and containers of resin identification codes 1, 2 and 5, and aluminium and steel tin cans, and curbside glass crates, glass bottles and jars.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Ford. Thank you. No further discussion. Put the motions. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you.
I wonder, just as a matter of interest, Your Worship, I'm actually just wondering, when government draft these regulations, whether they actually consider the extra cost to ratepayers and councils of actually chucking stuff into the landfill. And again, I think it's a poignant point that needs pointing out to somebody.
Good point. Thank you. So we're on 11.3. This is the CEDA Statement of Expectation, looking to adopt this. We have had some discussion on this through focus groups and etc. And so today we come to look at adopting it. So I'm going to hand it over to Marie, supported by Lynn.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Mayor and councillors. Let's take the report as read, and as you mentioned, it has already been through focus group and development committee. I'll just highlight some key points. That we work together with Palmerston North City Council to formulate the statement of expectation, which results in a combined stakeholders' expectations. Council's agreed to move from 1 year to a 3-year statement of expectation process. This will allow CEDA to plan for the following 3 years in line with our LTP cycle. The draft, as you've mentioned, has been through the Economic Focus Group early in November and the District Development Committee mid-November, and elected members all provided feedback from those meetings, and this has been incorporated into the statement of expectation. In summary, the key points from the feedback that's been incorporated: the existing statement of expectation was applicable but needed to be more succinct. To move from a 3-year to a 3-year statement of expectation with an annual statement of intent required. MDC's role in Te Tanganui to be included. Food strategy priority to move to implementation. And the individual stakeholder priorities have been removed and combined stakeholder expectations are listed. So the next steps, the Palmerston North City Council are looking to adopt also at the 18th of December is their council meeting. The finalised statement of expectation will be provided to CEDA, who will then provide a draft statement of intent detailing how they'll achieve the statement of expectation by the end of March. And council will provide feedback on the draft statement of intent that they provide. Let's open up to any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Hadfield.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Look, in this, and I'll just read this part of it out. Shareholders require CEDA to provide an activity-based budget, so the council, that probably should say councils rather than one singular council. It's on page 43. Can effectively communicate levels of service and value for money to their ratepayers. Now, I've always struggled with this, and over a period of time, I don't think I've been given any data or any sage, coherent descriptor of what I would call an aspirational desire that we have to actually be able to explain to our ratepayers how they get value. Now, I really struggle with that. And so, with all due respect, those few words almost fall in my category of lip service words. And I still don't. And I challenge any of my colleagues to tell me who have been here longer. Councillor Ford, Your Worship, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Quarry, whether you've had any sage advice or good data that actually explains to our ratepayers how they're receiving good value for that investment. And it's something that actually needs to happen, because it's one question I get asked often. Where's the value for money? So I'll leave it at that. And if colleagues have got any comments or any advice, I'd happily receive it.
I think in response to that, I'd say that their annual 6 monthly reports, their annual report, which is written and verbal, outline very clearly what CEDA has achieved. That is supported by their financial statements. And for those of us who sit on various committees, focus groups, actually being able to hear in detail from CEDA staff about the work they're doing in detail in our district is really comforting to hear. Unfortunately, not all councillors are there to hear that. But I see that the reporting process that they do to our council, their annual report, which is in writing, very clearly sets out what this region gets in response to the work that CEDA does.
With due respect, Your Worship, if I may, it actually says here, and value to communicate levels of service and value for money to the ratepayers, not to councillors, not to groups of council meetings, to the ratepayers. And what I'm saying is that we haven't, in my view, and I may be wrong, we haven't seen in simple, plain English data and criteria that actually tells the average ratepayer, who hasn't got a clue who CEDA is in the first place, but they know they're making a big contribution. They don't have, in my view, even a grasp of what's occurring.
Shane.
So I think the point here is that may have been the case in the past, but this letter of expectation is saying that's what we want you to do. So this is our expectation, is for them to show us where the levels of service and value for money. So how do they demonstrate? So their letter of intent, they have to show us how they're going to meet that. So this is just us saying, we want to see how you are going to show us how you give value for money. So I think this has to be evaluated on how they're going to do it once they give us back their statement of intent.
Thank you. Councillor McFadden.
Thank you, Worship. I guess this question's for Shane, I think, is that we have this letter of expectation. They don't actually deliver fair value. We have a contract that runs for how many years?
It's not so much a contract. We have an ongoing CCO, but the trustee requires us to give 3 years notice to withdraw.
Okay. So we have a letter of expectation with some, what we perceive as some performance criteria, but if they don't perform, then we're still locked into the CCO for 3 years. Is that what you're saying?
Yep.
Got to really wonder why we bother with the letter of expectation, because it really doesn't have any teeth.
Well, that's the reason why the letter of expectation is going to go to 3 years, because then CEDA have to demonstrate yearly how they intend to fulfil the requirements of the letter of expectation. And that may change from year to year through whatever initiatives they might be working on and how they might be delivering it. And that was one of the things that CEDA specifically asked the shareholders, was not to get into so much detail that it constrained them into actually fulfilling KPIs, rather than being flexible enough to be able to concentrate on where they were needed at the time. So this is a little bit of a new approach. I think it's worth giving it a shot and to see, because they are an organisation that needs to go where they can potentially go if they see opportunities. So this has taken a wee bit of work for both shareholders to get on the same page, but I honestly think it's worth a shot. See what they come back there with their statement of intent.
Thank you for your answer. I think that, as I said, we have no recourse on their performance because we're locked in anyway, so we really don't have anything to lose by doing this.
Well, the recourse you have is that you have delegates on the Electoral Commission who appoint the board. So the board ultimately are responsible for delivering on the statement of intent. And that's where you have your recourse, because you can pull people off a board, you can put new people on the board. So that's where council has its, if you like, its teeth.
Thank you. Any further questions, comments? Councillor Ford.
I'd like to ask Councillor Hadfield, what does he actually want in terms of specifics to prove value for money? Because economic development agencies, it's very hard for them to quantify or write in a report, this is how we have provided value for money. I mean, they just need one big inward investment success, the distribution hub thing kicking off, the food strategy, and we're into hundreds of millions of dollars of benefit, and the chicken feed that we give them each year, it becomes petty cash compared to the benefit of what they can potentially do. So I'm very comfortable with the statement of expectations. I'm pleased that we're going to 3 years. We spent the last 6 years, it's all we ever did. Several times a year, we were just working on statement of expectations and then reviewing the statement of intents. And it just, in my view, became a farce. So I'm very pleased to see this. As well as the three things I mentioned, there's the tourism side of things as well, which is important to us. So having been involved with Field and Promotion, which was a different type of organisation, but there's still people have, oh, what do you ever do? How have I ever benefited from your organisation? Well, you know, if you sat down with me for 4 hours, I could actually itemise, I could come up with a colossal list, but most people just don't understand. So I think it's a pretty unrealistic request, but I'm interested to know how you're going to answer me. What do you want?
Well, this is a bit interesting. Your Worship, I'm now assuming the Deputy Mayor is wishing a response. So, just simply what I actually said is that for the average ratepayer to understand exactly what benefit they're getting. You know, somebody might pay $600 a year to get water. They know what they're getting. And we're talking about people, and you rightly said, actually, most people don't understand. That's fine. All I'm saying is that we need to be able to give a message to people to understand the level of investment that council's making on their behalf. That's all. And actually, to be fair, the chief executive sort of answered that when he said it's in there. They are going to have, CEDA are going to have to communicate value for ratepayers. So it's up to CEDA, and it may be up to comms team to actually simply, in a very erudite way, stick stuff in front of the community that says this is actually the benefit, because quite frankly, it hasn't happened. That's all I'm saying.
Well, the annual report does do it.
But we've got to, get back to the art of communication. We write stuff down. People don't understand it. We had a bit of a conversation around the table about plain language and using, you know, the literacy levels of the population in New Zealand. You know, the fact that newspapers are written for 12 to 14-year-olds, and talking to Lynn about the electricity lines, you know, going back a number of years, the reading age was 7 to 8 years. You know, so we've got a whole lot of issues around actually people and us providing the information to people in a manner that they can understand. I'm not saying that they don't do any use, Councillor Ford. What I'm saying is that for the average person that's making a significant contribution through their rates, they're entitled to know what they're getting for it. Like, they know they're getting their rubbish picked up, they know they're getting water supplied, they know they're getting their sewage taken away. In my view, it's no different. It's just a matter of, one, how the information is given, and then how the information is distributed to the community in a manner that they understand. That's all I'm saying. Nothing sinister.
Thank you. I think the other thing is that as a shareholder, and so does the city, we have a responsibility to tell the story to our ratepayers about what is happening. And CEDA make it very clear often that they don't put themselves front and centre of any economic development activity that they're involved in. So it's not about seeing their name all over the place. It's about, has this district and this region, are we seeing economic benefit, economic return for the investment that we are doing? And many of these projects, big projects like the Central New Zealand Distribution Hub, are very, very long-term projects. So you're not going to see that benefit, but you need someone there in the background actually pulling all the partners together, being the glue to make it all happen, not actually shouting, we did this.
Actually, I think, Your Worship, you're agreeing with what I'm saying. We need to tell the story. So for me, QED.
Thank you. Lynn, did you want to add anything in this discussion?
No, I guess, you know, to Michael's point, I think it's a significant benefit having the statement of expectation every 3 years, because when we're having to negotiate with Palmerston North City Council as well, there's an added complexity in there. And so I think that it's, you know, a step forward, being able to do this once every 3 years.
Yep.
And the statement of intent is the key document.
Thank you.
Out of this.
And, you know, I'm just thinking back to what Councillor Hadfield's talking about. A really good example, and I was thinking of Steve here, is you go up to the northern part of our district and you see the beautiful country road signage, the brochures sitting around. CEDA did those. So CEDA's in the background pulling all that information together with the operators and promoting our district for us. And so, again, it comes back to telling the story about what they're actually doing.
Can I say something?
Steve.
Yeah, I'm not sure why my picture's not coming on. I hear what Councillor Hadfield saying, and I hear what Councillor Ford is saying. Yes, they do a lot of work in the tourism side for our northern region. You're right, they have renewed all of the signs so they're uniformed. And they put a massive big sign up at the car park at the Rangiroa Scenic Reserve and paid for it themselves, which I don't think very few people know about that. So, and you're right, your worship, by saying that they do want to keep in the background. They don't want to put their name forward on some of these achievements. So I would agree with the 3 year, but I can hear what Councillor Hadfield's saying too. I don't know how to get the people to know, because of the very fact is a lot of them don't read much, the Fielding Herald, and you can put a lot of stuff in and out there, but I think we just have to, if we're asked, we just have to try and say we are, I believe, on the right road as far as value for money goes. Yeah, so thanks, Helen.
Thank you. Lynn?
Given that we are now starting the district news again, I'm sure that there'll be opportunities to be able to describe some of the activity that CEDA has been able to initiate in the district. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
Right. Any final comments? Councillor Underwood.
Just reading on page 42 that CEDA's success will be measured. There's 4 measures there, and 3 of them are actually can be measured in a numerical way. So they could be reported on. The 4th one seems to be more subjective, but perhaps that's one way of reporting to the ratepayers in ways that they will understand: job growth, increase in median household income. They'll be interested in that, and the number of investment deals secured. The strength of relationship. I don't know how you would measure that, but I'm sure someone could come up with something.
Thank you. Right, so if we go back to page 36, we have 2 recommendations there. If I could have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Ford.
I'll move 1, that council adopt the CEDA Statement of Expectations 2024 to 25 to 2026-27, Long-Term Plan 2024 to 34, included as attachment 1. 2, that the Chief Executive be delegated authority to make minor amendments to the CEDA Statement of Expectations 2024-25 to 2026-27, Long-Term Plan 2024 to 34, included as attachment 1 in order to accommodate any minor amendments sought by Palmerston North City Council as the joint CEDA shareholder.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Blackmore, thank you. No further discussion. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you. And just while we're finishing up on the CEDA topic, you'll see on your tables today, I left a copy of the summary of the new food strategy that was launched last night. That is a strategy that has been put together by CEDA. Right, consideration of later items. Yes, we have our late item.
Just accept us.
Oh, okay. No, this is about. I'll put it into there to go into open session. So it's not a late item, it's only late item. Right, so that item is part of our public excluded business. So therefore, I'm happy to move that a motion that the public be excluded from the following parts of proceedings for this meeting: 1, the contract award recommendation and our late item. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ford. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you.